Hello, everybody. Welcome. Excited to have everybody here. Welcome to the 2026 Hyperspace Challenge webinar series. I'm your host today. This is the first time for me to host this webinar and to actually be the moderator and everything. So excited to do this. Excited for the first time that I do this to be with Austin Link. He's very wonderful to talk to and everything like that. So very excited. If you guys would tell us who you are, where you're from in the chat. Always love to see who's joining us and where you're joining us from. If you have questions as we're talking, if you guys could please put them in the Q&A down there at the bottom. There's a little button that says Q&A. If it's in the chat, we'll ask you to move it over to the Q&A. So easier just to start with that first. So Hyperspace Challenge webinar series, it's part of an ongoing series hosted by us and the Air Force Research Lab and the U.S. Space Force. And the mission is to strengthen the connective tissue between diverse communities within the space industry. So today, I'm very excited, like I said, to be joined by Austin Link from Starfish Space. Starfish Space has quietly become one of the most closely watched companies in the emerging in-space servicing economy. Founded in 2019 outside Seattle by former Blue Origin employees, this company set out with an ambitious goal: make satellite servicing routine, docking, refueling, relocating, extending mission life, and eventually helping create a far more interactive orbital ecosystem. What's remarkable is how quickly they've moved from concept to credibility. Since 2019, Starfish has assembled an unusually strong network of commercial, government, and technology partners and has accelerated both their technical development and market adoption. In many ways, their story is a case study in how strategic partnerships can compress timelines in the modern space industry. By 2023, the U.S. government was taking notice. The company secured a Tactical Funding Increase, or TACFI, award through AppWorks, helping bridge the gap between prototype development and operational capability. But perhaps the most revealing chapter in Starfish's story came during adversity. In August of 2023, their first OtterPup mission encountered major challenges after development when the host vehicle entered an uncontrolled spin and OtterPup's thruster system was ultimately compromised. Rather than write off the mission, Starfish pivoted, working closely with D-Orbit and leveraging tracking support from Lyra Labs. The team improvised an orbital rendezvous experiment that still demonstrated key elements of autonomous proximity operations. Even without docking, they achieved valuable imaging and navigation milestones and showed the kind of resilience and collaborative execution that investors and customers remember. This, to me, was an I remember when moment. I just remember watching this story unfold and just being captivated by the resilience and creativity and wherewithal demonstrated by the small company. I think that a lot of people had the same experience. So this ability to turn partnerships into momentum became a recurring theme. And in the years that followed, Starfish partnered with several companies to advance on orbital refueling technologies and received several government and commercial contracts. And then came OtterPup 2, launched aboard SpaceX Transporter 14 rideshare mission in 2025. The mission represents another leap forward, attempting one of the first autonomous docking demonstrations using only electric propulsion in partnership with French propulsion company ThrustMe. And the momentum is only accelerating from there. Today, Starfish has publicly announced 5 customers for its Otter platform, including Luxembourg SES, NASA, Space Systems Command missions, and an SCA contract. And there are others yet to be announced, I'm sure. An extraordinary level of traction for companies still early on in its operational history. So this progress helped culminate in a massive $100 million fundraising round in April of 2026. So super exciting times for Starfish. And it's really what makes Starfish such an interesting company to talk to right now. Their technology matters, of course, but their trajectory also raises bigger questions about the future of the space industry. In a sector where timelines are brutal, missions are risky, and capital is scarce, How do you build partnerships strong enough to accelerate trust, execution, and adoption all at once? So that's what I'm excited to explore today. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you all Mr. Austin Link, co-founder of Starfish Space, who has generously offered his time to dive into today's topic of partnerships. Austin, will you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Happy to. Kelly, thanks for having me. Thanks for the awesome overview on Starfish Space and our background and our story getting here. Kelly's explained most of it, but I'm one of two co-founders of Starfish Space. We build a satellite called the Otter that is designed to grab and move other satellites. And it turns out that's something that people are really excited about. And we have a couple of demonstration missions that have been or are currently on orbit, and we're building up our first full Otters. My background for reference is all engineering. So before Starfish, I was at Blue Origin for a while. I was at Lockheed Martin for a while, similar with my co-founder. And we went through the Hyperspace Challenge back in 2020. And it was super helpful for us on a variety of fronts. We met a lot of people that we still interact with today. We figured out the very first starts on how do you work with the US government and do useful things for them. And ultimately we got second place in the pitch contest and got $15,000 for it. And that money was the first revenue ever for Starfish Space.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's such a great story.
That was a cool moment. That's a cool moment.
Very cool. Yeah, it's amazing what you guys have accomplished since then. I'm telling you, it's really inspiring, I would say. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about everyone else here, but I've been patiently waiting for news on the Otter Pup 2 mission. And I know I saw you guys posted something yesterday, so that was really great that you guys announced your partnership with Gilmore Space Technologies to do that docking
Yes,
demonstration.
it's been a little bit of a long journey for Otter Pup 2. Some partnerships go well, not all partnerships go well. And
Yeah.
we sort of got stuck on orbit, having to find a new company to go dock a new satellite to go dock our satellite with.
Really? Okay.
And so there was a bit of a scramble, and we eventually found Gilmore and reoriented and went over to them to go and operate around them. And it was fun to get to announce that yesterday.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize there was so much drama going on behind the scenes. That's amazing. Yeah. So again, you guys are pivoting like crazy and just showing that you guys can just do what it takes to get things done. And I think that is part of your success. But in just 7 years, Starfish Space has put together an impressive series of tech demos. And honestly, you all seem to be giving a masterclass in how to iterate quickly in the space industry. I mean, honestly, it's just amazing. But so tell me, what are some of the biggest things technically, culturally, or operationally that have helped your team move forward at such a rapid pace?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that help us move relatively fast at Starfish Space. And you should always say relatively because we're 6.5 years into this and we don't have our product operating in the market. And by most definitions of the business, that's quite slow. I do think that for what is perhaps typical of developing really complex satellite servicing vehicles and what other folks have done, we have moved faster than that and moved with fewer resources. I think there's a couple of things that comes down to. One of them is just focus. And when you're in the early stages of a startup, you can get pulled in so many different directions. And when you lose your focus, you get 30% of the way to a whole bunch of different goals. And that means none of them got accomplished. So we really try to focus on the Otter and the life extension and the satellite disposal missions that it's targeted to. And we build technologies for the Otter and we build the Otter systems. And sometimes people call us up asking us to do other things. And we say, hey, it's not what we do right now. That's hard to do, but I think the focus is really key and really valuable. And then I think the other thing that has been positive for us is that we have a lot of great people to work with. And that is true internally, that we have a lot of great people at Starfish Space, and true externally, that there are a lot of great other folks in the space industry that we work with that are all required to make what we're doing, or really what anybody's doing in the space industry, possible.
Okay, that's really great. So team is a big part of it, and also partnerships. But I'd like to pull on that partnership thread a little bit, and specifically looking at rideshare first. I know there's several different aspects to that, but so starting with your relationship with SpaceX, you've flown on our missions on Transporter 8 and 14, respectively. Tell us a little bit about your experience there. How did you approach this? Did you have help? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, I think of sometimes the term partnership is used to describe a whole bunch of different relationships that you can have as a
Right.
business with other businesses. I think that many of them are more accurately described as customer or vendor, and that sort of puts a certain perspective on things. And so SpaceX for us is a vendor. They provide launch services. We need to buy launch services. And so we buy the launch services from them. And I think that sometimes you can overcomplicate that a little bit in your head.
Mhm.
But really what we do is we go to the SpaceX website and we say, we would like to buy a spot on the rocket, please. And they would say, sure, sign the contract and send the money over at these times. And there you go. Now you're getting on a launch. And it's actually sort of a surprisingly easy thing to do. And then SpaceX is unique as a vendor for a couple of reasons, but the largest one being that they're such a dominant and extraordinary company. And people talk about low cost launch and the wide availability of launch, and you talk about that in general terms, but the reality is it's just Falcon 9 from SpaceX. And it's just Falcon 9 is like single-handedly made the entire new space industry possible, and made into, our business would not be possible at all without Falcon 9. And so what they do is really amazing. And we work hard to do the little things we can to make SpaceX's life easy and support them, because they're so much of what our business and the entire industry stands upon.
Okay. And so what about like integration or anything? Like how does that all work? Like technically to get do you have to do any kind of integration for that?
So as part of the rocket launch for a rideshare program, it's not just, hey, show up with your satellite and pop it on the rocket and there you go. There are a variety of things that you have to do along the way to be able to get on the rocket. And some of those are not with SpaceX. Some of those are things like getting your licenses with the FCC so that you can use your radios and actually communicate to your satellite. Some of those are you actually got to build your satellite. But then there's a lot of milestones with SpaceX along the way, milestones where they say, hey, tell us about what your satellite is going to weigh so that we can start building that into our analysis. Where they want for some amount of documentation on, did you get your license? Where they want you to have shown that your satellite is going to survive the vibration that occurs during launch, so you're not going to mess up with anybody else's payload. And you have to provide those all along the way, and those can start as much as 12 or sometimes even 18 months before your launch date. And then once you get called by SpaceX to go to the launch, which is usually about 45 days before the launch or so, then you got to show up with your satellite, and we do have folks that go with the satellite to help integrate it onto the rocket, and that's working together in tandem with SpaceX to do that, and sometimes with other folks. There's a lot of great companies. Maverick Space Systems is one that we really like working with, that can help with that launch integration stage if that's not what your company is focused on doing at that moment.
Okay. That's great. So I want to pull on a different side, a different angle of the partnerships. I mean, like you said, not everything is a partnership, but over the years, Starfish Space has built an impressive network of collaborators and mission partners, including Benchmark Space Systems, who is also Hyperspace Challenge alumni, Deorbit, Leo Labs, Thrust Me, Impulse Space, TRL-11, and now Gilmore Space Technologies, just to name a few of the different kinds. And I'm sure they're probably all different, kinds of partnerships and things like that, and maybe different kind of things. But from the outside, you guys make it look super easy, but I'm sure there's a huge number of moving pieces in partnership like that. So aligning schedules, integrating hardware, managing mission constraints, and still keeping your own objectives on track. Can you walk us through some of the nitty-gritty details? So if you're a startup just starting out, how do you find these partners? Where do you go to get engaged with them? Starting with that, and then kind of like what that process looks like from that point. Once you meet that person, what does that process look like?
Yeah, I can talk through all of that. I will say, just to sort of frame everybody's mindset, I think every single one of those companies that you listed is a company that we've worked with. And I think every single one of those companies is ultimately a vendor of Starfish Space,
Okay.
where the relationship is we pay them to provide products or services to us.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't mean that it is like purely a contractual relationship, that a lot of times, especially when you're working with newer companies or newer products, that there is a relationship where you're working together in many ways, and maybe you're trying to do some proposals together, and maybe you're also talking about how you do marketing together, and also maybe you are buying something from them. But I say all of that just to say I do think that focus is really important with a startup. And I think that going out and saying, we need cameras for our satellite, let's go look for who provides cameras for the satellite, and TRL-11 is the best choice, is a great thing to do. I think that something that can become a distraction is to go, wow, I met these TRL-11 folks. I really like them. Let's form an amorphous partnership and try to see how we can work together. And so we always kind of try to start with the objectives, the ultimate end objectives first, as we drive where we invest our effort. And yeah, it's a little funny because at this stage I can sit here and go, oh yeah, well, what do I do for all of these companies? If I want to work with TR11, I call Nicole, their CEO, and we start talking through things. But how the heck does that start? And I wondered that a lot in the early days, because Trevor and I were just engineers that came from Blue Origin. We didn't really have any network to speak of in the broader industry. And I think the two things that stand out are, one, going to conferences. And the biggest conferences are probably Space Symposium, Small Sat, Satellite. There's a couple in like the Bay Area. You go to these conferences, get out of your comfort zone, go just meet a bunch of people and shake hands, grab a bunch of business cards. And it's a great opportunity to go talk with folks in our industry in particular. That works with potential customers, potential vendors, people that you don't even think you'll partner with, but 2 years later you go, oh, actually, I need that. Happens all the time. So I think the conferences are really great. The other thing that's really great is just a good cold email. And that you have to frame it in a certain way, but especially as an early stage startup, sometimes it is shocking the people that are willing to respond to your cold email. If you cold email a vendor, sometimes the cold email is like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I would like to give you money. And people, you don't respond to that. Not always respond to it, maybe not as often as you might think, but it's a value proposition there. And I think you can cold email folks on the customer side too, and just go like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm starting business doing such and such. I am just interested to understand some of your problems, not being overly pushy, being overly silly, just like asking questions and learning and getting to know them and being really thankful along the way can go quite a distance. And so that's, I think, the early stages of partnerships, getting out, getting to know people. Some folks will say no, that's fine. There's a lot of people that reach out to me and say, oh, would you be interested in this thing that we're developing? And I respond a lot of times and just say no, or not right now, because we got to be focused. That's fine. Doesn't cost you anything. Once you've gotten to know folks, there's always a finding out process on, hey, does it make sense for us to partner here, for us to work together on a proposal, or for one of us to be a supplier to the other? that process is generally more natural and the sort of thing that you expect. And as you're doing it as part of building a good partnership, you tell them the things that you're interested in and the things that you're afraid of, and they tell you the same. And sometimes it means there isn't a deal that works, and sometimes it means that there is a deal that works. And it's really not a zero sum game. It's not, boy, you're bartering over these dollars, and whoever wins the negotiation wins it, and whoever loses the negotiation loses. If you're losing a negotiation and you're going like, oh, this isn't going to be a good deal for the team, then fine, just like don't sign the deal. That's great. Um, a good partnership means everybody can benefit. It means like, hey, maybe one company gets the money that they need and the other company gets the product that they need, and that works really well. That's like how it works with TR11 or Leo Labs for us, or Thrust Me. Um, and then I think maybe the trickiest thing is after you have worked, decided that you're going together, is to actually work successfully together. Um, Especially in our industry, where a lot of people are selling things for the first time and they're just figuring stuff out. And somebody will send you their system and you'll go to plug it in and it won't really work the first time. And you don't know
Mhm.
why. And you have to go figure it out together. Or somebody will say they're going to deliver on January 1st and it's January 15th. And you're like, well, where the heck is it? Um, that basically happens with almost everybody in the space industry if you're not careful. And so there's a couple of things that we like to do to try to have some success there. And I think the biggest one to me is you got to be um, engaged and talking details on a regular basis, starting early in the process. So if it's July 1st and somebody's going to deliver you something on January 1st, then you should say, hey, what's the schedule to get to January 1st?
Mhm.
And then on July 15th, you should call them and say, okay, what has happened over the last 2 weeks? Did that match the plan that we had over the last 2 weeks? Did we order all of the parts? Did we start testing the components that came in? Because if you're not doing that, then a lot of times people will be like, well, we haven't really started on it yet. We got other stuff that's higher priority in the pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. You want to save your margin to the end and not in the beginning. And so I think that sort of thing early on. And then if you're on the supplier side, then really early on setting the expectations with the customer and saying, hey, here is what you're going to see from us over the next 6 months. And then start to deliver on those things that you're going to see. And people will go, hey, look, this company is actually going and delivering on it and I'm comfortable with it. And they start to give you the bandwidth to go and make decisions and focus on building it. And you build that trust in your relationship. And I think as you build that trust, there's also going to be moments along the way where you lose a little bit of trust, where things don't go exactly the way you want them to. It is inevitable in any partnership. And I think making sure that you as a company and as your company gets larger, your entire team is can put challenges in perspective and can say, hey, we're having a bad moment here. This thing didn't show up on time or didn't work the way that we wanted to, but there's a reason why we chose to partner with this company in the first place. And we're not going to get angry with them and we're not going to abandon ship, because those are sorts of things that lead to everybody being unsuccessful. That doesn't mean that you don't eventually leave a partnership if somebody is truly not a good partner, but making sure that you do when it's a thoughtful and right time to do it, and not because you're frustrated in a moment. And that's way harder to do than what you might think in practice.
Yeah. So what if you're on the other side though, and you're trying to get somebody to give you money to do, which you guys are really good at, getting people to give you money to to do your things. How do you get people to trust? I mean, because I'm sure when you first started out, you were met with a lot of skepticism about, can these people actually make this work and can they do this? Like, how do you convince people that you can do this?
I think there's two ways that you kind of convince people. Well, there's probably three ways that you convince people that you can do something challenging that you can deliver for them. And one of them is just like having a good product and good engineering. And That way, when they start asking technical details, you have answers that make sense and it's something that they want. And those are sort of the natural things that like you can do all of the nice business development stuff that you want, but if your company doesn't have a good product that is useful for people, it's not going to go anywhere. Um, but I think there's a couple of other things that really can help get people excited to work with your company. Um, One of them is just telling people the truth. It's so tempting, especially in the early days of a startup, to defend yourself, to be like, oh my gosh, no, this is going to be good. We got it. We're definitely going to be able to do it. And the truth is, you're not definitely going to be able to do it, but it's very possible that you have a good enough chance of being able to do it that it's worth trying to do.
Mhm.
And everybody's excited about that. People who want satellite servicing who haven't bought it from us are still going like, well, yeah, if you can do it, that would be really awesome. We would love it if you could provide us this service at that price point. Maybe we aren't ready to go put money in you yet, but we hope that you can do it. And if we're sitting there and being honest with them and not saying like, oh no, it definitely just 100% works, there's no risk yet, like that would be a silly thing to say. But if we're saying, oh yeah, there's risk, that's why we're doing this demo mission, that's why we did these tests on the ground, and we'll keep you updated as we sort of take steps with the otter to even reduce the risk further, then people go, yeah, okay, this is somebody that I can see myself working with, and I understand I'm getting the full picture here. And then I think the other thing that is true as part of that is to get people to buy in little chunks along the way. So a lot of the contracts that we signed are for like on the order of $50 million. Those are big contracts. People don't just spend $50 million willy-nilly. Um, you're not going to just walk into a room with somebody and get them to go sign a $50 million contract with you. Generally, you have to get them to buy in little bits along the way to get there. And so with a lot of our customers, the journey looked like this. We said, first off, are you just willing to spend 30 minutes talking to us? Just 30 minutes. We just got some questions. We just want to learn how you think about things. We're not going to try to sell anything to you. We just want to spend 30 minutes learning from you. And getting somebody to say yes to that is getting them to invest some time in you. That's a little bit of a buy-in in. When you call them back a few months later and you're saying, hey, could you sign this piece of paper that we have stamped all over is not legally binding or in fact legally meaningful in any way, but basically says you think what we're doing is interesting, and if we could build it, you would pay such and such a price for it. And then people, they got to put their name and their signature on something, even if it's not legally binding. And you can take that to all sorts of other people you want to work with and say, hey, look, I talked with so and so at the NRO, and they are interested in what we're doing. So maybe it's worth investing a little bit of money, or maybe it's worth joining our company, or maybe it's worth giving us this R&D contract. And we kind of just ramped up thoughtfully the asks over time and said, okay, well, now are you willing to do an engineering study with us? Okay, well, now are you willing to sign a term sheet that says that we're going to do a mission at this price once we get the contract language out? And then eventually, okay, are you willing to sign the contract? And doing each of those bit by bit, asking thoughtful, reasonable steps along the way makes it a lot more digestible for folks. And if you're doing that and you're being truthful at the same time and honest at the same time, then you're somebody that they're going to want to work with as a vendor. And then it's just a matter of, is your product actually a valuable thing for them?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is just taking it bit by bit, like you said, and building that. And it's important for startups to realize that this is not a fast process. That none of this, especially with space, I would say, is definitely not a fast process. Like you said, you're not just going to pick up the phone and get a $50 million contract right away. So I think that's really some really great points. We do have a question here from Jeff Crooken. He asked, when you're not yet delivered anything, how did you respond to potential customers who were hesitant because they didn't want to be your first customer? And I guess you kind of already answered that, but maybe you could go into it a little bit more.
Yeah, Jeff, good to see your name. it's hard to get the first customers signed up. But there are things that get the first customers excited to sign up. A lot of times, your first customer is a customer that they're going to see a lot of long-term benefit if you succeed. And so they're willing to invest a little bit in you. Our first two customers were Intelsat, which is now SES, so the largest commercial geostationary satellite operator in the world, and the US Space Force. And both of them, the SES, if we can really provide life extension at good price points, it's really, really valuable for them and their constellation. For the US Space Force, in a environment where space infrastructure becomes ever more important, the ability to extend that space infrastructure or even someday go and protect that space infrastructure is really, really valuable to them. And so they're more comfortable with the idea of, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk to get this ultimate end goal and payout. And I think the key is they just want to know what risk that they're taking. And so you can tell them the truth about the risk. And not all customers are going to be willing to do that. You can't just convince any customer to go be the first to sign up for your mission. So you have to just talk to a lot of customers and see which ones have the mindset and the long-term value to be interested in taking that risk. And then there's a lot of ways that you can structure the contracts too that help. So you can structure a contract where like, hey, this is a $50 million contract, but maybe you're only actually going to pay $5 million of it until we are providing the services. And then you're not signing up for a $50 million investment in our company. You're signing up for a $5 million. It's not really an equity investment, but in a way, investment in our company. And so those are the things that I think help with early customers. And they do put some pressure on you that like, you got to go and deliver to make good on the contract. Well, welcome to the company, right? If you're not going to deliver on what you say you want to do, then you're not going to have a company.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one more question. We got a few more minutes. So I'm just curious. So I know, can you tell us how big of a role the government partnerships played in your success? I think I probably already know the answer, but.
Yeah, government partnerships have played a huge role in our success, and they have on a variety of different fronts. In the very earliest days, getting a little contract from the US government is the sort of milestone that allows other people to buy in. Being a part of the Hyperspace Challenge and getting second place in the pitch contest. Well, when we were trying to hire people, we said, we were part of this government program, and actually we were chosen for second place in the pitch contest, and they gave us some money for it. Winning the first phase 1 SBIR allowed us to start going to other customers inside and outside of the government and say, hey, the Air Force is actually funding a little bit of the development of this proximity operations software that we're developing here. So those early stages have been really valuable for partnerships. And the other thing that I think can be really valuable from some of those early small R&D type contracts in ways that we still use today is you can get really some very knowledgeable folks on the government side to be in the room with you and giving you feedback. So for us, Alex Sizemore at Air Force Research Labs spent multiple years sitting every other week with us and looking at the latest analysis and results in development that we've done and giving us ideas and feedback and asking questions. And that was great. There was kind of an expert in the room who would help us just because we won a couple of these early stage contracts. And then over time, the government also has helped us move from the early R&D stage to being customers for full missions and really becoming the business that we want to become. And there are a lot of great programs in the government that can help you take that leap. And StratFi and TACFi are probably the biggest, most notable ones that people are familiar with. But they help you go from that sort of research and development stage to going and delivering the full product stage, which is great. It's really valuable.
That's great. Did you guys ever do a CRADA?
We have done a couple of CRADAs. So actually our first agreement with AFRL before even an SBIR was a CRADA.
Okay.
And for folks who don't know, CRADA is Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. That's a non-funded agreement where you can get a little bit of access to government facilities and the time of people on the government side, but they're not paying you money for it. They're just kind of paying you in kind with that facility access and the time that they're spending. But that can be a really nice arrangement to start building some of those relationships and get some of that research support in facilities. And then we did a CRADA a couple years ago also that was sort of specific to a robotics lab at AFRL that we wanted to be able to run some tests at, and the CRADA allowed us to do that.
Okay, yeah. I always recommend those to people as a starting point. It's a way to build trust. It's another one of those, get your foot in the door. I mean, it's not financially, it doesn't help you financially, but it definitely gets you in the door.
Yeah, I agree. I think CRADAs can be great.
Yeah. Okay, so we are at time now. We're going to switch over to our second segment of the program. Austin, it is such a pleasure always to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time and such great valuable advice and insight. So thanks again, and hopefully you'll hang on for till
Uh,
the end.
Thanks so much for having me, Kelly.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so we're going to turn it over to Tan Mai from Lyra. We're just really excited to welcome you, Tan Mai. She is joining us to tell us about her 2-week matchmaking sprint focused on one of the biggest bottlenecks in launch logistics, efficiently matching payloads to buses. So as launch demand continues to grow, and wait times increase, Tanmai is bringing Lyra's AI-powered technology to help streamline the matchmaking process, improve utilization, and reduce delays across the launch ecosystem. So with that, Tanmai, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That's great. Thank you, Kelly.
You are welcome. Thank
Great.
you.
Great. So as Kelly mentioned, I'm Tan Mai. I'm the founder of Lyra. Before founding Lyra, I was working at Terran Orbital as well as Astra. So I've been in the industry working on partnerships, mission integration, a lot of those things, and saw this problem in mission integration. As Austin also mentioned, Starfish, you have to go find all these partners, vendors. It takes a long time. You go to conferences, you kind of search, cold email people. We streamline that process by tracking the entire industrial base, matching people who have the right architectures technically as well as programmatically, understanding like what camera works on which bus and what works together well so that we can streamline that process. And staying to the theme of partnerships with Hyperspace, we're running this mission matchmaking sprint. And it came up because we were talking to a lot of startups in the industry, and we found even though there's so much launch availability, launch capacity there, it's all booked up for the next couple of years. If you go on SpaceX website, try to find a ride share, it's impossible. But there are spacecraft platforms who already have launches booked. They have space on their platforms to launch. There are payloads who want to get demo missions in the next couple of years. So we made this a very streamlined, targeted process. And what we're doing is we have this form online on a website that Hyperspace is going to post here, where you can fill out what you want to launch in the next year, or you can fill out if you have the capacity available to launch. You have a launch booked, you have spacecraft, a lot of OTV companies out there have room. So you can fill out your capacity, availability, all of that stuff. We'll have the application open up until end of next year or end of next week. Sorry, not next year. So please fill that in. And after everyone submitted that, the first 2 weeks of June, we'll run like in the back end compatibility assessments of which payloads work with which buses, or if a combination of these payloads can go on a bus and launch and save you on launch costs. And we'll email everybody who's applied and anonymize the results first, tell you and let you opt into this introduction. So you can tell us, yes, this sounds great. Please connect me to this company, and we'll make that quick introduction within 2 weeks so that you can chat with each other and you can take it from there. And we will, be very private with your data. We will not share this with the other companies. We'll leave that up to you. We'll just let you know ahead of time. Here's the companies that match, and you'll let us match. So we manage your data security. No information is getting shared with anybody without your permission. So I'll stop there and open to any questions about the program.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A yet. If y'all have any questions, put them in there, please. No questions yet. Oh, here we go. Any need for precision machine components? It is
Um,
it is not reading that way, but I just want to be certain.